Stop. Don't take another step. The man's voice isn't loud, but it's sharpened, deliberate, the kind of tone that doesn't ask for attention because it assumes obedience. You don't just walk into first class, he continues, eyes raking over her with open contempt. This cabin is for people who earned it. And you, he pauses, letting the silence do damage. Look like a clerical error. A black teenage girl freezes in the aisle, boarding pass raised halfway, suddenly aware of how exposed she is. Don't insult everyone here by pretending this is confusion, the man adds coldly. People like you always hide behind paper when you know you don't belong. She swallows once. Sir, my seat. Don't interrupt me, he snaps. Your voice doesn't upgrade your status. The silence that follows is violent. The first-class cabin feels tighter now, like the air itself has turned judgmental. Conversations die mid-sentence. A few passengers lower their eyes. Others raise their phones instinctively, sensing something ugly unfolding. The girl remains standing, calm, still. She is Arielle Brooks, 16 years old, black, deep brown skin, slim build, dressed simply in a gray hoodie, dark jeans, and clean white sneakers. No jewelry except a modest watch on her left wrist. No parent, no guardian, no visible sign of wealth or protection. Blocking her path is Captain Richard Harlan, 52, white, broad-shouldered, silver hair clipped close, his crisp uniform radiating practiced authority. He doesn't look angry. He looks certain, like this moment confirms something he already believed. He tilts his head, studying her as if she's a faulty product. Let me guess, he says. Someone handed you a ticket you didn't pay for, told you to act confident, told you no one would notice. A woman in row 1 stiffens. A man in row 3 exhales sharply through his nose, fists tightening on the armrest. Arielle's voice is steady. My seat is 2A. Harlan lets out a short, humorless laugh. That's adorable. He leans closer, close enough that his shadow swallows her. You know what I see? He says quietly. I see a kid playing dress-up in a cabin that isn't meant for her. I see a problem before it becomes a headline. He straightens and turns slightly, projecting his voice so everyone can hear. Ladies and gentlemen, apologies for the delay. We're addressing a compliance irregularity in the forward cabin. Apparently, airline policy is optional to some people. The word irregularity lands like a stain. Arielle raises her boarding pass fully now. The logo of the commercial airline gleams under the cabin lights. Her name is printed clearly. Her seat number, 2A, is unmistakable. Harlan doesn't even glance at it. No, he says, waving it away as if it's meaningless. We're not doing the paper routine. I've flown longer than you've been alive. I know what belongs in first class and what doesn't. He gestures sharply to the side. Step out of the aisle. I'd like to sit, Arielle says evenly. Harlan's mouth tightens. You don't get to like things right now. The cabin goes quiet. Even the hum of the engines feels louder. A flight manager approaches, tablet in hand, eyes flicking nervously between Arielle and the captain. Name? She asks, too loudly. Arielle Brooks. Age? 16. A pause. Whispers ripple. Traveling alone? The manager presses. Yes. Harlan clicks his tongue. There it is, he says. Unaccompanied minor in first class. That alone should raise red flags. That's not against policy, Arielle replies softly. Harlan turns on her, irritation flashing. Don't quote passenger rights to me like you skimmed them online. Rights don't mean entitlement, and entitlement is written all over you. A phone camera clicks, then another. Harlan notices and smiles. Go ahead, he says. Record it. This is what enforcing standards looks like. Not everyone deserves comfort just because they want it. He signals toward the cockpit. The door closes with a muted thud. Moments later, his voice returns over the intercom. Smooth, professional, terrifyingly calm. Cabin crew, hold service in the forward section. We are verifying authorization before departure. Forward section only. Passengers in row 1 and 2 buckle in. Drinks are poured. Leather seats creak as people settle, while Arielle remains standing alone in the aisle. A flight attendant approaches again. Please confirm your name, she says. Arielle does. And your age. She complies. Again, the attendant says, glancing toward the cockpit. Arielle answers once more. Again, the attendant insists, voice tighter now. That's when Arielle stops speaking, not in defiance, not in fear. She simply stops. The silence unsettles them more than shouting ever could. Harlan steps back into the cabin, jaw clenched. Non-responsiveness is also a problem, he says. You don't get to shut down when adults are speaking. Arielle meets his eyes. Her voice is level. I've answered every question. And you'll answer again when I tell you to, Harlan snaps. Because right now you're not a passenger. You're a situation. More phones rise. Harlan gestures sharply. Clear the aisle. She can wait while we decide what to do with her. What to do with her? The words cut deep. Arielle steps aside as instructed. She adjusts the strap of her backpack once. Precise. Controlled. She glances briefly at her watch, syncing it with cabin time. No one notices. Harlan turns away, convinced he's reasserted order. What he doesn't realize, what no one in this cabin realizes yet, is that this humiliation, dressed up as policy, has already crossed a line that cannot be erased. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's the opening wound, and it will cost him everything. If you have ever been humiliated, judged, or treated like you didn't belong, then what happens next with Arielle will make your blood boil. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices to follow what happens when silence becomes power, because the captain thinks control is absolute, and he has no idea what he just set in motion. No one tells Arielle she can sit. That becomes the first cruelty of Scene 2. Not shouted, not announced, just quietly enforced. Minutes pass, then more. The aisle clears, boarding finishes. The cabin settles into the soft clinks of glassware and murmured small talk, a normalcy that feels obscene with her still standing there, alone, exposed. Captain Harlan does not look at her again. That is deliberate. Authority doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just pretends you don't exist. A flight attendant approaches with a practiced smile that never reaches her eyes. We're just going to verify a few details, she says, voice sweet, rehearsed. Standard procedure. Arielle nods once. The attendant gestures to the boarding pass still in Arielle's hand. Please confirm your name. Arielle Brooks. And your date of birth. Arielle answers. And the name of the purchaser of the ticket. Arielle hesitates. Just a fraction of a second. That's optional, she says calmly. The attendant's smile stiffens. It helps us move faster. Arielle says nothing. The attendant glances toward the cockpit, then writes something on her tablet. Not what Arielle said, something else. A second attendant appears, then a third. Each asks the same questions, in slightly different wording. Each time the volume increases. Each time, nearby passengers become unwilling witnesses. This is not verification. It's erosion. Captain Harlan finally re-enters the cabin, hands clasped behind, his back like a warden inspecting a cell block. He stops a few feet from Arielle, close enough to loom, far enough to avoid accusation. You see, he says conversationally, loud enough for row 1 to hear, this is what happens when people think rules are suggestions. Arielle keeps her gaze forward. You don't get to choose which procedures apply to you, he continues, especially not on my aircraft. He stresses my. A man in row 2 shifts in his seat. A woman across the aisle presses her lips together, uncomfortable, but silent. Harlan gestures toward Arielle's backpack. What's in the bag? Personal items. Harlan raises an eyebrow. That wasn't an answer. It was sufficient. Arielle replies evenly. That does it. Harlan turns sharply to the flight manager. Manual check, he says. Right here. The words hit like a slap. Is there a reason? Arielle asks. Not defensive, just precise. Harlan smiles thinly. Your attitude is the reason. The flight manager reaches for the bag. Arielle doesn't pull it away. She doesn't resist. She simply steps back half an inch, enough to mark the moment. The bag is opened in full view of the cabin. Clothes, a notebook, a tablet. Nothing dangerous, nothing suspicious. Harlan watches, unimpressed. See? He says to no one in particular. Always so offended when there's nothing to hide. Arielle's jaw tightens, just barely. The bag is closed. No apology follows. Now, Harlan says, we still have the issue of compliance. He turns to the intercom button but doesn't press it yet. He enjoys the pause. Passenger rights, he says mockingly, are not a shield against scrutiny, especially when behavior raises concerns. What behavior? Arielle asks. Harlan looks at her like she's proved his point. This, he says, this resistance, this attitude, this refusal to cooperate like everyone else. Arielle breathes in slowly. I have cooperated, she says, repeatedly. No, Harlan snaps. You've complied selectively. That's not cooperation. That's entitlement. The word hangs heavy. A phone camera shifts angle. Someone whispers, "This is wrong." Harlan hears it. He turns slightly, addressing the cabin now. Ladies and gentlemen, I assure you this is for your safety. Procedures exist for a reason. When someone challenges them, we must respond. Respond. As if Arielle is an incident, not a person. A flight attendant approaches again. Captain, she murmurs. Boarding is complete. Good, Harlan says. Then, louder. Hold departure. A collective murmur ripples through the cabin. Harlan looks back at Arielle. You see what you're doing? He says quietly. You're inconveniencing everyone. All because you won't just do as you're told. Arielle meets his eyes. I am not responsible for your choices. The words are calm. They are also dangerous. Harlan's face hardens. Careful, he warns. You're very close to becoming a bigger problem. He turns away, already deciding something. Moments later, his voice fills the cabin again, smooth and authoritative. For operational reasons, service in the forward cabin will remain suspended until further notice. A soft groan moves through first class. Arielle remains standing. Minutes pass, then more. A drink cart rolls by her, stopping for everyone else. A flight attendant avoids her eyes. This is no longer about verification. It's punishment. Arielle shifts her weight slightly, then stills. She reaches into her pocket, removes a pen, and writes something small and deliberate on the edge of her boarding pass. Time, names, phrases. No one notices, except the man 2 rows back who has been watching far too closely. He lowers his phone, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the captain. And for the first time since this began, Arielle is not alone in her awareness. The cabin hums with tension, thick and unresolved. This isn't over. It's only becoming systematic. The humiliation becomes official the moment Captain Harlan asks for the microphone, not the intercom, the handheld mic, portable, intimate, meant for announcements that demand attention. A flight attendant hesitates before passing it to him. Her fingers linger on the handle, as if she already knows this will be replayed somewhere it was never meant to go. Harlan clears his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, voice smooth, practiced, amplified just enough to reach every ear in the first-class cabin. Thank you for your patience. We are experiencing a delay due to a compliance concern involving a passenger in the forward section. Every head turns. Arielle stands where she has been left, just beyond row 2, half in the aisle, half in no man's land. Not seated, not escorted, suspended. Harlan gestures toward her with the microphone, not pointing outright, but close enough to remove any doubt. This is what happens, he continues, when individuals mistake personal privilege for operational authority. A low murmur ripples through the cabin. Arielle feels it, not as sound, but as pressure. Eyes on her skin, on her clothes, on her age. Harlan keeps going. Commercial aviation doesn't run on feelings, he says. It runs on order, on rules, on legal responsibility. When someone refuses to follow instructions, we have to assume risk. Risk. He lets the word hang, heavy with implication. A woman in row 1 stiffens. A man across the aisle leans forward, elbows on knees, uneasy. Arielle lifts her chin slightly. She does not speak. Now, Harlan adds, this passenger has been given multiple opportunities to cooperate. Instead, she's chosen resistance. Resistance. Arielle finally speaks. Her voice is steady, but it cuts through the cabin's hum like glass. I followed every instruction. Harlan smiles into the mic. That's your interpretation. A phone camera zooms in. Somewhere, a recording light blinks red. Harlan lowers the mic just enough to address her directly. You don't get to define compliance, especially not when your presence already violates common sense. Common sense. He raises the mic again. For transparency, he says, we will now conduct a manual verification of seating authorization. The words sound procedural, reasonable, safe. They are none of those things. A flight manager steps forward with a clipboard. Another attendant positions herself beside Arielle, not touching her, but close enough to make it clear she is being contained. Please state your full name, the manager says loudly. Arielle Brooks. Age, 16. Purpose of travel. Arielle hesitates. Answer the question, Harlan says into the mic. Personal, Arielle replies. The manager looks to Harlan. He nods. Refusal noted, the manager says, writing something down. Arielle watches the pen move. She knows, instinctively, that what's being written is not what she said. That's inaccurate, Arielle says. Harlan lowers the mic again. His voice is quieter now, sharper. Careful, he warns. You're already being generous with my patience. The manager continues. Do you acknowledge that your presence in first class may constitute a seating error? No, Arielle says. The word lands clean. A man in row 3 mutters, Jesus. Harlan snaps the mic back up. As you can see, he says to the cabin, this is exactly why we take these situations seriously. When a passenger refuses to acknowledge basic procedure, it creates liability. Liability. Arielle feels the word turn the cabin colder. What liability? She asks. Harlan's eyes flick to her, annoyed that she's still speaking. The kind that leads to lawsuits, he says. The kind that exposes us to claims of corporate negligence if we ignore warning signs. Arielle understands now. He is not humiliating her by accident. He is building a narrative where she is the risk. A flight attendant steps forward. Captain, she murmurs, barely audible. People are recording. Harlan smiles wider. Good. He raises the mic again. For the record, he says, this airline takes legal accountability seriously. We cannot allow emotional manipulation to override safety. Emotional manipulation. Arielle's fingers curl slowly at her sides. She breathes in once. Out once. You're lying, she says quietly. The cabin freezes. Harlan lowers the mic so fast it clicks against his knuckles. Excuse me? You're documenting refusal that didn't happen, Arielle says. Her voice does not shake. You're framing compliance as threat. A beat. Then Harlan laughs. Not loud. Not warm. Oh, sweetheart, he says. You have no idea how the real world works. He lifts the mic again. For everyone's comfort, he announces, service in the forward cabin will remain suspended until this matter is resolved. Groans ripple through first class now. Not at Arielle, at the inconvenience. That's the point. Harlan looks directly at her. See, he says softly, Everyone's waiting because of you. Arielle does not respond. A flight attendant approaches with a cup of water, then stops short when Harlan shakes his head. "No service," he says. The attendant withdraws. Arielle's throat tightens, not from fear, from dehydration, from being made visible and invisible at the same time. Harlan gestures toward the aisle again. "Remain where you are," he orders. "Do not move without permission." The word permission slices. Minutes pass. The plane hums. People whisper. Cameras stay raised. Arielle remains standing. Her legs ache. Her shoulders tense. She reaches into her pocket and removes her pen again. On the back of her boarding pass, she writes 3 words. Public. Documented. Deliberate. The man 2 rows back sees it. He straightens slowly, eyes narrowing. Not at Arielle, but at Harlan. The cabin is no longer neutral. It's charged. Harlan feels it too. He scans the rows, sensing the shift. But he doesn't stop. He doubles down. And in doing so, he steps past something he will never be able to undo. Because this is no longer just humiliation. It is evidence, and it is being created in real time. The first thing Arielle notices is the change in sound. Not louder, sharper. The low hum of the aircraft no longer feels neutral. It vibrates with something unresolved, like a held breath stretched too long. The cabin isn't just watching anymore. It's waiting. Captain Harlan senses it too. That's why he keeps moving. Authority hates stillness. Stillness gives people time to think. He paces the narrow aisle once, microphone clipped at his side, eyes scanning faces. Some passengers look away, others don't. A few phones are still raised, steady now, no longer trembling. Arielle remains standing where he left her. Her legs ache, her mouth is dry, her back is straight anyway. A flight attendant approaches quietly, bending close. "Captain," she whispers, "we should let her sit. This is escalating." Harlan doesn't lower his voice when he answers. "Escalation happens when people challenge order." He turns deliberately toward Arielle again. "You've made your point," he says, not unkindly, but not honestly either. "Now sit down and we can all move on." Arielle looks at him. "I was never allowed to sit," she says. The sentence is simple, factual, devastating. A murmur ripples through the cabin, this time louder, less controlled. Harlan's jaw tightens. "You were allowed to cooperate." Arielle shakes her head. Once. Barely. "No," she says. "I was allowed to be compliant, not respected." The distinction lands harder than shouting ever could. Harlan turns away sharply, signaling the flight manager. "Document refusal," he snaps. The pen moves again. That's when a man 2 rows back stands up. Not abruptly, not dramatically, slowly, deliberately. He is in his late 40s, black, wearing a worn blazer over a plain shirt. His posture is careful, practiced, the posture of someone who has learned what standing costs. "I need to say something," he says. Harlan spins. "Sit down." The man doesn't. "My name is Marcus Hale," he continues, voice even, carrying without force. "Former aviation safety systems engineer, 15 years. A few heads turn, a few phones reframe. "I was dismissed," Marcus says. "After filing internal reports about falsified compliance logs, I recognize what's happening here." Harlan laughs sharply. "Oh, here we go. Another story." "This isn't a story," Marcus replies. "It's a pattern." Harlan steps toward him. "Sit down." Marcus doesn't raise his voice. "You're isolating a minor. You're denying service without cause. You're narrating a false risk profile into the record." The word record lands like a switch being flipped. Arielle lifts her eyes for the first time since Scene 3 began, not to Harlan, but to Marcus. Harlan points a finger at him. "You're disrupting flight operations." Marcus nods once. "So were the procedures I flagged years ago. That didn't make them less illegal." A collective inhale moves through the cabin. Harlan feels control slipping and tightens his grip. You have no authority here, he says coldly. Marcus reaches into his pocket and pulls out his phone, not raised, not filming wildly, just held at chest level. I'm documenting, he says. Openly, Harlan's voice sharpens. That's prohibited. Marcus doesn't blink. So is retaliation against a passenger for asserting basic dignity. Arielle closes her eyes for half a second, not in relief, in confirmation. A flight attendant whispers urgently to another. Someone in row 1 shakes their head. A woman near the window murmurs, "This is wrong." Harlan turns toward the cockpit door, then stops himself. He knows, everyone knows, that walking away now would look like retreat. He squares his shoulders instead. "You want scripture?" he snaps suddenly, voice raised, unhinged for the first time. "Here's one. Obey those in authority." Marcus looks at him steadily. "Actually," he says, calm as stone, it says, "Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees." Isaiah 10:1. The cabin goes silent. Arielle opens her eyes. Harlan's face flushes. "You don't get to preach at me on my aircraft," he says. Marcus nods. "Then stop acting like you're above judgment." Arielle speaks again, soft but clear. "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." Psalm 34:18. The words are not thrown, they are placed. The cabin hears them differently than shouting. They settle. They stay. Harlan laughs brittle. "This is unbelievable," he mutters. He turns to the flight manager. "Secure the logs, now!" Marcus's eyes narrow. "Say that again," he says. Harlan snaps, irritated. "Secure the logs!" That sentence is the moment. Marcus taps his phone once. Documented. Arielle's fingers curl slowly at her sides. Harlan realizes too late what he's done. This is no longer internal. This is no longer contained. A flight attendant approaches hesitantly. "Captain, compliance requires—" "Enough," Harlan barks. "I'm in command." Marcus exhales slowly. "That's the problem." He looks at Arielle, then back to the cabin. "For anyone—" "Recording," Marcus says clearly. "This is what escalation looks like. Silence is being treated as threat. Procedure is being weaponized." Arielle adds quietly, "Better is a poor person who walks in integrity than one who is crooked in speech." Proverbs 19:1. No one laughs. Harlan looks around now and sees it. The shift. The cabin is turned, not loudly, not heroically, but decisively. He presses the intercom button with more force than necessary. "For operational reasons," he announces, voice tight, "departure will be delayed." Groans ripple. But no one blames Arielle now. They look at him. Marcus remains standing. Arielle remains standing. Two figures refusing to move. Harlan lowers the mic. "You think you're brave?" he says to Marcus. "You think this ends well for you?" Marcus meets his stare. "I think it ends truthfully." Arielle breathes in once, deeply. She looks at Marcus, not grateful, not pleading, aligned. The plane is no longer just a plane. It's a witness chamber, and Captain Harlan has just moved the line from humiliation into exposure. He can feel it. He just doesn't know yet how far it will go. The captain's voice changes first, not louder, not softer, careful. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harlan says into the intercom, "thank you for your patience. We are resolving a minor documentation issue. Please remain seated." Minor. The word is surgical, designed to cauterize panic. Arielle hears it and understands immediately. This is the false calm. The moment authority pretends everything is under control because it senses the opposite. Marcus remains standing 2 rows back. He doesn't speak now. He doesn't need to. His phone is still raised, not dramatically, not hidden. Steady, public. Harlan steps toward the cockpit, then stops himself. Too visible. Instead, he motions sharply to the flight manager and whispers fast, clipped instructions. Call ops. Tell them we've got a youth issue. Wealthy family, manageable. We just need cover language. Arielle hears him. She isn't meant to. That's the thing about confidence. It gets sloppy when it believes it's still protected. The flight manager nods and moves away, already dialing. Arielle watches the pen in her hand. The ink is almost gone. She presses harder, finishing one last line on the back of her boarding pass. Narrative in progress. The captain turns back to her, posture relaxed now, voice lowered. Look, he says as if offering peace. This doesn't need to go anywhere. Sit down. We'll forget the rest. Forget. Arielle meets his eyes. You already documented it, she says. You can't forget what you recorded. Harlan smiles thinly. Documentation can be clarified. That's when Marcus speaks again. Clarified how? He asks. Harlan doesn't look at him. By context? Marcus nods slowly. Context is what makes it worse. A chime. Sounds. Not the cabin bell. A phone vibration. The flight manager's. She freezes mid-step, glances at the screen, then back at Harlan. Something in her face shifts, professional neutrality cracking into concern. She approaches the captain and whispers, urgently now. Operations wants confirmation. They're asking for timestamps, names. Harlan's jaw tightens. We'll send it after pushback. They want it now. The false calm begins to tremble. Harlan straightens, schooling his expression. Tell them it's being compiled. The manager hesitates. They're looping legal. The word legal changes the temperature. Marcus lowers his phone just enough to speak. You see what you're doing, he says. You're escalating internally because you didn't stop externally. Harlan snaps toward him. Sit down. Marcus doesn't. Arielle speaks, not to the captain, not to Marcus, but to the flight manager. I authorize real-time. Review, she says. The manager blinks. Authorize? Harlan turns sharply. Authorize what? Arielle lifts her eyes, calm, measured. Independent compliance mirroring, she says. Active oversight. Effective immediately. The words land strangely in the cabin. Not dramatic, not threatening. Technical, precise. Harlan frowns. You can't authorize anything. Arielle doesn't raise her voice. I already did. The flight manager's phone vibrates again. This time she answers. Yes, she's here. Correct. I understand. She lowers the phone slowly. They're requesting the logs now, she says. Direct access. Harlan laughs once. Too fast. That's not how this works. The manager swallows. They say the system is already pulling them. The silence that follows is different from before. It isn't humiliation anymore. It's fear. Harlan's mind races. He gestures sharply to a nearby attendant. Secure? The tablet. Now. Marcus's eyes narrow. That's obstruction. Harlan ignores him. I said now. The attendant hesitates. Just a beat too long. In that beat, Arielle speaks again. This is the false reveal, she says quietly. Harlan snaps toward her. What did you say? You think this is about me, Arielle continues, voice steady. You think I'm the problem you can manage, the captain scoffs. Aren't you? Arielle shakes her head once. No, she says. I'm the reason it's being watched. Marcus exhales slowly. There it is. Harlan steps closer, lowering his voice dangerously. You're a child. You don't have that kind of power. Arielle looks up at him, not defiant, not afraid. Power doesn't need to announce itself, she says. It just stops asking permission. The cockpit door opens slightly. A first officer peers out, eyes darting between the captain, the standing passengers, the raised phones. Captain, he murmurs, Ops is asking for a status update. They're concerned. Harlan straightens, the weight of command suddenly heavier. Everything is under control. The first officer hesitates. They're saying the review is no longer discretionary. That's the true reveal. The system is moving without him. Harlan feels it now, the loss of center, the sense that whatever he says next will be recorded, replayed, judged outside his control. He looks at Arielle differently for the first time. Not with contempt, with calculation. "Sit down," he says quietly. "Now." Arielle doesn't move. Marcus doesn't move. The cabin watches. Harlan turns back to the intercom, fingers trembling just slightly as he presses the button. "For operational reasons," he announces, "we are delaying departure." This time no one groans. They understand now. The false calm is gone. All that's left is exposure. Arielle breathes in, slowly. She has said everything she needs to say. From here on out, the system will speak for itself, and Captain Harlan is about to learn the difference between authority and accountability. If you've ever watched power try to quietly erase its own wrongdoing, then what happens next will leave you stunned. Stay with Dignity Voices, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because the counterattack is coming. The captain still thinks he can save himself, and the mistake he makes next will change everything. Captain Harlan doesn't calm down. He pivots. There's a kind of panic that hides behind procedure. Straight spine, clipped words, the sudden obsession with policy, as if policy can erase what people just saw. Harlan steps into the galley, pulls the curtain halfway closed, and snaps his fingers at the flight manager like she's part of the equipment. "Call ops," he says. "Now!" She follows one step, then stops. "Captain, they're already requesting logs." "Tell them we have a disruptive minor," Harlan hisses. "Refusing instructions, safety concern." The manager blinks, stunned. That's not accurate. Harlan's eyes harden. Accuracy is negotiable. Narrative isn't. She doesn't move. He leans closer, voice low and cruel. "If you want to keep your job, you'll stop hesitating." Her jaw tightens. "I'm not falsifying an incident report." The refusal hits him like a slap. He exhales sharply, then steps past her as if she's furniture. Back in the cabin, his face is arranged into authority again, uniform immaculate, smile thin, a man trying to look like control while the floor shifts under him. Marcus is still standing 2 rows back, phone held at chest height, openly recording. Arielle is still standing near the forward aisle, backpack strap looped over one shoulder, eyes steady. The cabin watches them like 2 unmoving points in a storm. Harlan raises the handheld mic. Not the intercom, the mic. So, this feels personal. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces, smooth and firm, "we are initiating safety protocol due to a non-compliant passenger in the forward section." A wave of discomfort moves through first class. Safety protocol means diversion. Diversion means consequences for everyone. That's his play. Make the cabin resent her. Marcus steps into the aisle, controlled but clear. "Captain, you're manufacturing justification." Harlan's lips curl. "And you're interfering with flight operations." Marcus doesn't blink. "I'm documenting your choices." Harlan turns sharply to Arielle, lowering his voice, venom disguised as professionalism. "This ends now," he says. "You've had your attention. Sit down and we can all move on." Arielle meets his eyes. "I was never allowed to sit." Harlan's smile tightens. "Then cooperate." "I did," Arielle says evenly. "You just didn't like what compliance looked like when it wasn't fear." The sentence lands like a blade. Harlan flushes. He leans closer, quieter, more humiliating, words aimed at her dignity, meant to carve her down in front of everyone without using a single slur. "You're standing there like a symbol," he murmurs, loud enough for the nearest rows to hear. "Like the cabin owes you empathy because you can stay silent." But silence isn't innocence. It's strategy. And I've seen this type. Make yourself a victim. Let other people carry your anger for you. A few passengers shift. Phones rise higher. Arielle's voice remains calm. "Stop narrating me." Harlan scoffs softly. "Stop acting like you belong here." The cabin goes colder. The cruelty isn't loud. It's surgical. Marcus's voice cuts through. "Captain, you're retaliating." Harlan snaps toward him. "Sit down." Marcus doesn't. The cockpit door opens slightly. The first officer appears, face pale but controlled. "Captain," he says, "operations is on the line." "Put them through," Harlan snaps. The first officer hesitates. "They're instructing you to stand down from further announcements." Harlan's jaw tightens. "On what authority?" "Compliance," the first officer says carefully, "and legal." The word legal changes the temperature. Harlan hears it and refuses to accept it, because accepting it means admitting he's not the highest power in the room. He turns back to the cabin and forces a smile. "This is being handled." Marcus lifts his phone a fraction. "It is. Just not by you." Harlan whirls, rage flashing. "You think you're brave? You think your little recording matters?" Marcus doesn't flinch. "It matters because you made it matter." Arielle speaks softly, almost to herself, but the cabin catches it. "For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest." Luke 8:17. The verse lands as a quiet verdict, not a sermon, a warning. Harlan's face tightens. "Don't do that," he snaps. "Don't hide behind religion." Marcus adds, steady, "A false witness will not go unpunished." Proverbs 19:5. Harlan's eyes blaze. "Enough!" He turns to the flight manager. "Bring me the incident tablet." The manager doesn't move. Harlan repeats, slower. "Bring it." She finally speaks, voice firm. "I won't participate in falsifying documentation." A sharp inhale ripples through the cabin. One of the attendants covers her mouth. Someone in row 1 whispers, "Oh my God." Harlan stands very still. Then he changes tactics. He steps closer to Arielle, voice low, attempting intimidation where procedure failed. "You want to know what happens next?" he murmurs. "Your name gets flagged. You get questioned every time you fly, and I'll make sure of it." Marcus's head snaps up. "That's retaliation." Harlan doesn't look at Marcus. "That's consequence." Arielle looks up at him, unblinking. "You're threatening a minor." Harlan smiles, contemptuous. "I'm educating you." Arielle's voice is steady, controlled, sharp enough to cut without raising volume. "Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." Proverbs 16:18. Harlan laughs once, brittle, cute. Then he turns toward the cockpit door, reaching for the lever he still believes will save him. The flight log. "First officer," he says sharply, "log moderate turbulence, and note that we initiated precautionary control measures due to passenger instability." The cabin is perfectly smooth. No rattle, no bump, no shake. Marcus's voice slices through immediately. "There is no turbulence." Harlan's eyes flash. "Log it." The first officer doesn't move. "Captain, I can't enter false conditions." Harlan steps closer, face hard. "That's a direct order." The first officer's voice stays steady, quiet, courage. "I refuse." The refusal is the hinge of the whole story. Harlan stares at him like he's betrayed the crown. "Fine," he snaps. "I'll do it myself." He lunges into the cockpit. The door closes. For a beat, the cabin is silent. Everyone listening to the faint movements inside, like a courtroom holding its breath. Then the intercom clicks. "Cabin crew," Harlan's voice says, tight, forced, "prepare for moderate turbulence conditions." The lie is audible in the stillness. Phones rise higher. The cabin doesn't groan now, it stiffens. Marcus speaks clearly for the record. "For the record, the aircraft is stable. No turbulence present." The cockpit door opens again, wider this time. The first officer steps out, face set. "Captain," he says, loud enough for nearby rows to hear, Operations is instructing you to cease. You are not authorized to enter false conditions. Stand down. Harlan appears behind him, eyes blazing. You're undermining command. The first officer meets his gaze. You're undermining the record. Arielle doesn't move. She doesn't smile. She doesn't celebrate. She simply says, soft and final, "Let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream." Amos 5:24. The words settle like weight. Harlan looks around the cabin, at the phones, the witnesses, the flight manager who refused, the first officer who held the line, and the girl he tried to reduce into a problem. He understands too late. Every move he makes now creates more evidence. He lowers the mic slowly. "This isn't over," he says, quiet, bitter, aimed at Arielle but heard by everyone. Arielle meets his gaze. "It is," she replies just as quietly. "You just haven't accepted it yet." Marcus lowers his phone a fraction. The counterattack ends when the record begins. The cabin doesn't cheer. It exhales, one long collective release. Because everyone knows what just happened. A captain tried to weaponize authority, then tried to weaponize the log. And that single decision changed the case from inconvenience to investigation. The plane lands like nothing happened. That's the cruelest part. The tires kiss the runway with a gentle thump. The cabin chimes. Overhead bins pop open. People reach for bags and pretend they're just tired travelers again. Like the last hour wasn't a public dismantling of someone's dignity. Captain Harlan doesn't announce a thank you. He doesn't say goodbye. He stays in the cockpit too long, as if time might reverse itself if he waits hard enough. But consequences don't reverse. They arrive. The cockpit door opens. The first officer steps out first, eyes forward, jaw set. Behind him, 2 airport security officers appear at the top of the jet bridge, calm, not rushed, like they've done this before. One of them speaks without drama. "Captain Richard Harlan?" Harlan steps out slowly, cap still on, shoulders squared like he's walking into a ceremony, not a reckoning. "Yes. We need to speak with you," the officer says. "Please come with us." No handcuffs, no shouting, just a quiet relocation of power. Passengers pause mid-aisle. Some stare openly now. Some look away as if eye contact would implicate them. A woman in row 1 mutters, "Oh, wow," like she's watching weather change. Harlan's eyes flick once toward Arielle, quick, sharp, searching for something. Fear, satisfaction, a reaction he can use to reframe the story. Arielle gives him nothing. She stands near the forward galley, backpack on, boarding pass folded into a neat rectangle, her face composed in a way that doesn't invite interpretation. Marcus stands beside her, shoulders relaxed, phone lowered now. Recording is no longer necessary. The officers guide Harlan down the jet bridge, and the plane exhales. Not relief, gravity. The room they take him to isn't dramatic. No interrogation lamp, no yelling, just glass walls, a conference table, and screens already displaying the footage. Multiple angles, multiple phones, stitched together by truth and time. Harlan sits, cap removed now, fingers clasped tightly as if posture alone can restore authority. Across from him, a compliance lead, airline legal counsel, and a man who introduces himself with a badge clipped to his belt. Transportation investigator, calm voice, eyes like a scalpel. The compliance lead speaks first. "Captain Harlan, you are being placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation." Harlan's mouth tightens. "This is overreaction." "It's procedure," the legal counsel replies. Procedure. The word tastes different when it isn't yours. The investigator slides a paper across the table. "We need your written account, now, while the timeline is fresh." Harlan looks at the paper like it's a trap. It is. "Before you write," the investigator adds, "understand this. Entries involving operational conditions, turbulence, safety threats, justification for control measures are subject to review. False entries have consequences." Harlan swallows. He forces a laugh that doesn't land. Nothing was entered. The investigator doesn't argue. He taps the screen instead. The clip plays. Harlan's voice. Prepare for moderate turbulence conditions. Then the cabin, smooth, silent, followed by Marcus's steady words. For the record, no turbulence present. The compliance lead leans in. Why did you say it? Harlan's eyes harden. Because the situation was escalating. The investigator's tone stays polite. Escalating because of whom? Harlan doesn't answer. He can't say her name the way he wants to say it here. Not on record. He shifts in his chair, and in that small movement, the room watches him lose the most precious thing he carried into the cockpit. Certainty. Down the hall, the flight manager sits in a smaller room, hands wrapped around a paper cup of water she hasn't touched. An HR representative speaks gently, like they're trying not to crack her. You did the right thing, HR says. The manager stares at the table. It didn't feel like it. It felt like I was betraying my captain. HR nods slowly. Sometimes doing right looks like betrayal to the wrong person. The manager's eyes fill briefly. He wanted me to write things that didn't happen. And you refused, HR says. That matters. The flight attendant from first class is interviewed next. Her voice trembles when she says, I knew it was wrong. I just didn't know how to stop it. The HR rep doesn't scold. She asks the question that lands like a stone. Why didn't anyone stop it sooner? No one has a clean answer. That's what makes it systemic. Arielle and Marcus move through the terminal like ordinary travelers, but the air around them is charged. They pass a few passengers from first class. Some glance at Arielle with soft guilt, others with admiration they don't earn. One man stops, middle-aged, expensive jacket, nervous smile. He starts. I'm sorry. I should have said something. Arielle looks at him calmly. You're saying something now. He nods, ashamed. I didn't want to get involved. Marcus's voice is quiet. That's how it keeps happening. The man swallows and steps away. They continue walking. Arielle's pace never changes. That too is consequence. She refuses to let the world rush her out of herself. Harlan's phone buzzes in his pocket. He glances at it during a pause. His wife's name. He doesn't pick up. Not because he doesn't care, because he can't control how he will sound. The legal counsel notices. You may want to understand, she says, almost kindly. This will not remain internal. Harlan's eyes flash. Because of that engineer? The counsel shakes her head. Because of your choices, and because there's already video. Harlan leans back, jaw tight, as if he's physically resisting the fact that the cabin saw him clearly. The investigator closes his folder. We'll contact you with next steps. For now, you're instructed not to fly, not to access company systems, and not to contact crew regarding this incident. Harlan's voice is low, bitter. So, I'm grounded. The investigator replies evenly. You're accountable. The door opens, and for the first time in decades, a man who lived above the clouds is escorted through an airport like any other passenger, except his uniform doesn't mean what it used to mean. At the gate exit, Arielle pauses. Not for cameras, not for applause. She simply takes out her boarding pass again. The same paper that was waved away like nothing. She looks at the back where she wrote earlier, times, names, phrases, then folds it once more, carefully, as if sealing the moment inside it. Marcus watches her. You okay? Arielle nods. Yes? A beat. Then she adds, softer, almost to herself. I didn't come here to win. I came here to not disappear. Marcus's eyes hold hers. You didn't. They walk on. Behind them, the aircraft sits at the gate, silent and innocent looking, like it never carried a courtroom in its cabin. But the record exists now, and the price has begun to collect itself, quietly, permanently, one consequence at a time. 3 months later, the airport looks the same. Glass, polished floors, rushing footsteps. Yet something small has changed. A new sign stands at the entrance to the first-class check-in lane. Dignity standard. All passengers, all ages, all backgrounds. Documentation integrity is mandatory. Retaliation is prohibited. Most people walk past it without reading. Arielle reads it once, quietly, then continues. She is dressed the same way she always is. Simple hoodie, backpack, calm posture, because she never needed the cabin to believe she belonged. She only needed the system to stop pretending she didn't. At a cafe near Gate 12, Marcus sits with a paper cup of coffee and a folded newspaper. He doesn't wave. He doesn't call out. When Arielle arrives, he stands just enough to acknowledge her, then sits again. Mutual respect, no performance. "You see it?" he asks. Arielle nods toward the sign. "They had to write it down to remember it." Marcus exhales. That's how institutions learn. On a nearby screen, an airline announcement plays quietly. Corporate music, soft voiceover, clean graphics. "We acknowledge harm. We are implementing stronger safeguards. We are committed to brand accountability." Arielle watches without emotion. Marcus slides his phone across the table. It's public now. On screen, ANOFA internal memo excerpt has leaked, settlement agreement finalized, executive apology issued, compliance reform scheduled. Arielle doesn't smile. She simply closes her eyes for half a second, then opens them again, like someone letting a wound seal, not because it never hurt, but because it won't be reopened. "Did he say sorry?" Marcus asks. Arielle's gaze stays steady. An apology isn't repentance. It's often reputation management. Marcus nods. Still, some people need to hear the words. Arielle looks down at her boarding pass, the new one, for a different flight, a different day. She touches the edge of the paper as if checking it's real. Then she speaks softly, not to preach, just to anchor herself. "He has shown you, O man, what is good, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly." Micah 6:8. Marcus lowers his eyes, respectful. That verse always finds the right moment. Arielle glances toward the gate. A young attendant is guiding an elderly man in a wheelchair, patiently, kindly. Another attendant kneels to speak to a child at eye level. No spectacle, just decency. It isn't perfect, but it's different. Her phone vibrates. A message, unknown number, one line only. "I was wrong. I'm sorry for what I did to you." No signature, no title. Arielle reads it once, then locks the screen. Marcus watches her carefully. "You okay?" Arielle nods. "Yes," then quieter. "Because I don't need his words to be whole." She stands. At the gate, the boarding line begins to form. No one blocks her. No one questions her. No one demands she prove she belongs. Before she steps forward, she pauses and looks once more at the sign. And she whispers, not for anyone else, only for herself. "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted." Psalm 34:18. Then she boards. Not victorious, not bitter, just free. Arielle's power was never her money. It was her restraint. The story's tension works because she refuses to give the antagonist what he wants most, an emotional outburst he can label as threat. Instead, she keeps dignity as her shield, letting truth become the loudest voice in the cabin. Her silence is not weakness. It's wisdom, strategy, and self-respect. Captain Harlan represents a different kind of danger, authority that confuses itself with righteousness. He doesn't just humiliate, he justifies humiliation with policy, then tries to protect himself by bending documentation. That's why his downfall is so severe. Not because the system is cruel, but because the record is honest. In the end, he isn't destroyed by Arielle's anger. He's undone by his own choices. The message here is simple, but it reaches deep. Dignity is not something you earn from other people. It's something you carry when others try to strip it away. And when ordinary witnesses stand up, like Marcus did, Small moments can become turning points that force institutions to change. In daily life, we may never face a cockpit, a microphone, or a cabin full of cameras, but we face smaller versions of the same test. When someone is mocked, excluded, or quietly punished, do we look away or do we stand? And when we are the one targeted, do we lose ourselves or do we hold our ground? God's lessons often arrive without thunder. Sometimes they arrive as a calm voice that refuses to lie. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Romans 12:21. If this story moved you, challenged you, or reminded you of your own worth, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with Dignity Voices. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed injustice in public? And what did you do in that moment?